Have you ever felt like people treat you a little differently, but you can't quite explain why? Nothing obvious, nothing direct. Just small moments where something feels slightly off, in a way you can't fully describe. And most of the time, you don't question it. You assume it's normal. But what you might not realize is that respect is rarely shown in obvious ways. Most people don't say it out loud. They don't announce it. Instead, they show it quietly. Through behavior that's easy to overlook if you're not paying attention. Respect doesn't need to be loud to be real. In fact, the more genuine it is, the more subtle it tends to be. It shows up in how people respond to you, how they carry themselves around you, and the small adjustments they make without even thinking about it. One of the first things that starts to change is how people listen. Not just hearing you speak, but actually paying attention. There's a difference between someone waiting for their turn to talk and someone who is fully focused on what you're saying. When people respect you, they tend to interrupt less. They give you space to finish your thoughts. And when you're done, there's often a brief pause, like they're processing what you said instead of immediately responding. That pause is subtle, but it means your words carry weight. That weight doesn't just stay in the moment either. You might notice that things you say come back later. People remember them. They bring them up in different conversations, or they act on something you mentioned without making a big deal out of it. That's not something people do for everyone. When your words stick with someone, it usually means they value what you say more than they show. At the same time, there's often a shift in how people speak around you. Conversations become slightly more measured. People think a little more before they respond. It's not forced or uncomfortable, but there's a clear difference in tone. They avoid saying things that feel careless or dismissive. That kind of awareness usually only appears when someone sees you as someone worth being careful around. Not out of fear, but out of respect. You may also start to notice that people come to you for your opinion, even when they don't necessarily need to. They ask what you think, not because they're unsure of themselves, but because they value your perspective. It becomes less about needing an answer and more about wanting your input. That's a quiet form of respect, because it shows they trust how you see things. Another shift happens in situations where you set boundaries. When you say no, or when you choose not to engage with something, people tend to accept it more easily. There's less pushback, less pressure to explain yourself. That doesn't happen with everyone. When people respect you, they don't feel the need to challenge your limits. They recognize them. They adjust without making it a problem. There's also something that happens when you're not present. You might not see it directly, but it shows in how people talk about you when you're not around. Respect doesn't disappear the moment you leave. If anything, that's where it becomes more visible. It shows in the way your name is mentioned, in the tone people use, in whether your presence still carries weight, even when you're not there to influence the moment. And beyond all of that, there's a quieter layer that's easy to miss. People observe you more than you realize. Not in an obvious way, but in small moments. They notice how you react under pressure, how you handle situations, how you carry yourself when nothing is being said. That kind of attention usually isn't random. It happens when someone sees something in you that stands out, something they're trying to understand or even learn from. When all of these behaviors come together, they create a pattern. Not a loud one, not something that's announced, but something consistent. And that consistency is what makes it real. Because respect isn't built on one moment. It's built on repeated signals that don't need to be explained. The reason a lot of people miss this is because they expect respect to be obvious. They expect compliments, recognition, or direct acknowledgement. But most of the time, real respect doesn't look like that. It's quieter, more subtle, easier to overlook if you're only paying attention to what people say instead of how they act. And once you start noticing these patterns, the way you see people changes. You stop looking for loud validation, and you start recognizing the quieter signals that were always there.